Welcome back to the channel, Bridging the Gap, Student to Engineer, where STEM professionals provide advice to students. Today's video is going to be a discipline deep dive into aerospace engineering. This is the second one that we've done that's a discipline deep dive. The first one was a request. The second one is really because I've been seeing so many students interested in aerospace engineering, and I have been seeing some interesting data as I've been going through a lot of different schools and looking at a lot of different majors. So I think this is a good one to do next. If you have any requests for other disciplines, please let us know in the comments and we will get on those. All right, so aerospace engineers, like all engineers, identify, formulate, and solve complex engineering problems by applying the principles of engineering, science, and math. But specifically, for aerospace, the design and test aircraft, spacecraft, satellites, and missiles. Aerospace engineers work closely with engineers from a variety of disciplines, and we'll get to that actually later in the video. But right now, we're just talking about including mechanical, electrical, materials, structural. There are quite a number of other disciplines that go into designing and testing aircraft, spacecraft, satellites, and missiles. Aerospace engineers also create solutions at the interface of aerodynamics, air propulsion, avionics, materials, structural analysis, and manufacturing. These are a lot of different things that go into what an aerospace engineer might do. Aerospace engineers in general advance the human experience in aerospace and outer space. All engineers are here to advance the human experience in something, and aerospace engineers focus on that experience in aerospace and outer space. And as we know, the outer space piece of that is growing a lot. The career outlook for aerospace engineers is good. The median pay in 2023 was $130,000 a year. That is on the very high end of the engineering disciplines median pay. And like all engineering disciplines, the typical entry-level education is a bachelor's degree. The number of jobs, is a little bit of a number that maybe we can't necessarily get our head around, but definitely the job outlook of 6% growth in the next 10 years from 2023 to 2033 is faster than average, and that's really good to see. The employment change is just looking at how many additional aerospace engineers there are going to be needed in the US in the next 10 years. And these are all good numbers to see. Okay, so industry organizations, we talk about this in some of the other videos and the importance of getting industry organizations, even if you're not yet majoring in aerospace engineering, is to have connections to professionals, have connections to scholarships, get more information about the industry and those types of things. So I always want to provide you with some examples of the industry organizations you might be able to look into, reach out to, or participate in, even when you're in high school. So those here, in this case, American Institute of Aeronautics and Astronautics, that seems to be the primary industry organization. There are also a number of more specialized organizations, Vertical Flight, National Association of Rocketry, which is far beyond just aerospace engineering, but is something that definitely, if you're younger or older, you can get into rocketry and start understanding more about the industry and about the principles related to aerospace engineering. The International Astronautical Federation, it's always nice to have some of those international organizations. You can get exposure to what other countries are doing also. And then I put the Society of American Military Engineers on here. You do not have to be in the military or enlisted or an officer to participate in organizations like this. There are quite a number of civilians who work with the military in engineering capacity and other capacities. So definitely an organization to look into whether or not you're interested in the military. If you're interested in aerospace engineering and you're looking for a school, or you want to build your list of schools to apply to or to look into, there is quite a long list of ABET accredited schools And there's just a sample of those here, but I will provide a link to the ABET website in the description of this video so that you can go and look at the longer list. But they're definitely all over the country, and a variety of different types of schools, also a variety of levels of how challenging they are to get into. From what I can see, there's quite a number of state schools, and so you should hopefully be able to find that your state school offers aerospace engineering. Okay, so a really important thing to look at when you're looking at schools is the school outcomes, the student outcomes. We have a video that talks a lot about this, and this channel has quite a number of videos about specific schools looking at their outcomes. Those outcome videos are general for all engineering, and these are a sample of the outcomes for schools that make available enough information that we can put it on this table. There are a lot of schools that have it summarized, so I can't really tell specifically about aerospace, but these ones definitely provide that. These are not necessarily the top aerospace engineering schools, they're just ones that provide the data. So let's just get into this. If you look at the annual grads for all of these, you can see that the size of the programs are significantly different. Like, for example, University of Kentucky just graduated 16 grads last year. That is a very small program, whereas Purdue had 200. So significantly different. Your experience in that school is going to be different based on the size. There's advantages and disadvantages of both. If you're interested in a little bit more about that, leave that in the comments and we can talk more about it. For those schools where the annual grads is a greater than a number, it's because the greater than 74 and greater than 60, those are the numbers of grads that responded to the first destinations or student outcomes survey. And I wasn't able to see how many grads actually graduated. But if you take that information and you look at the percent of the total engineering at the school, and this just gives you an idea of how prevalent the major is within the School of Engineering at that one university. You'll see that they're, with the exception of Purdue, they're all in single digits. This is not where you're going to go to a school and they're going to be predominantly aerospace. You'll notice I don't have Emory-Riddle on here, which is more focused on aerospace, so that would be a different story. And Purdue itself has a long history in aerospace, aeronautical, producing a lot of the first astronauts, producing the first and last person on the moon, and those types of things. There's a very long history there with aerospace, and so if you're interested in something like that and a larger program where it's more common or more engineers at the school are in aerospace, Purdue would be that area. Okay, so then let's go over to positive outcome rates. This is where the schools report on the percent of students who have a job, have gone to grad school, or are doing something else they want to do, like going into the military, volunteer service, those types of things, within 6 months of graduation. You'll see that, 4 out of the 6 are in the 90s. Those are really good. Those are the schools that you want to go after. Those are the schools that are providing a pretty high certainty that if you go to that school, you are going to have a positive outcome, you're going to graduate doing the next step that you are expecting to do when you spend 4 years getting a degree. Ohio State and Georgia Tech are significantly lower. And I will tell you that these percents of positive outcomes are concerning to me. Ohio State outcomes for aerospace and aviation engineering is lower than the average for all of their engineers. So their grads in aerospace and aviation are having a more challenging time getting a job or going to grad school than the rest of their engineering population as a whole. that's concerning, but it's something that, if Ohio State is your state university, or it's the one that you can afford, it's definitely something to look into a little bit and ask a lot of questions if you're looking at that school. Georgia Tech, the 69% positive outcome rate for aerospace is about on par with the rest of their engineering. And so while I hear a lot about Georgia Tech and I hear it has a really good reputation, I am concerned about the 70% placement rate or positive outcome rate for all engineering grads. I don't have an explanation. We have a full video on Georgia Tech, as we do have full videos of almost all these schools. But something to look into, and don't necessarily go after a school because you hear it's good. Look at the results. Look at if you go there, if you are going to get what you want out of a degree from there. Okay, and then the second half of this table is looking at the percent of grads that go get a job, how much they're making, and the percent of grads that continue their education. The reason these are important is because generally engineering is seen as a field where you can get a bachelor's and move on, get a job right away, have that career. What I'm seeing in aerospace is, 50 to 70% of grads going directly into the workforce rather than going into something else is a little bit lower than a lot of other disciplines, but something to be aware of when you're going into it and when you're choosing aerospace engineering, that over half of the grads are going in and getting a job. So if that's your intent, then you'll follow most of the grads. But there are, at least at some schools, a more significant percent of their grads that are continuing their education. So I'm going to jump over to this last column. The percent of grads that are continuing their education varies from 14% to 42%. Typically what we see in engineering schools is this is around 20-30% in the high 20s. And so you can see the variation. But oftentimes it's hard to tell when you're looking at this data if grads with their bachelor's are going to get their master's because they want to, and that was their intent, or because they couldn't get a job. But nevertheless, these percents vary by school. Something to consider when you're looking at schools. If you're absolutely set on going to grad school after graduation, and you decide to go to Ohio State, there will not be very many people who are in the same path as you. On the other hand, if you decide to go to Purdue, there'll be a lot more. Okay, and then I'll step back one column and look at the median starting salary. The 70 to 80 is typically what we're seeing in all engineering disciplines. The data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics saying that aerospace engineers make significantly higher than some of the other disciplines doesn't necessarily line up with the starting salary, but something to notice and note. And if you are looking at the return on investment of a four-year engineering degree, these are the kind of numbers that you want to use. Of the schools that tell us what companies are hiring from them, I've made a list of those companies that are most often hiring the grads. My attempt here has been to list them in order, but it's a little bit hard to tell with the data. So you see a lot of aerospace, defense companies, space companies. So all in line with the major. One thing that is interesting is that you don't see any companies outside of aerospace industry on here. And the reason I mention that is because it is actually somewhat common for engineering grads to go do something different, like go into consulting or finance or something like that. And I'm not seeing a single company on these lists that look like grads are getting a degree in aerospace and then deciding to do something different. So that's a good thing. It shows that students that are going into aerospace engineering are really wanting to do what they're doing, and that the industry is bringing them in. Okay, so first job titles, none of these say aerospace engineer. That was something very interesting to me. And it is, from what I can tell, and this is probably not representative of the entire industry, but the job titles that companies are giving these grads is not aerospace engineer. It's mechanical engineer, electrical or electronics, computer design engineer, those types of things. And so don't expect to go look for an internship or full-time job for something called an aerospace engineer. What you want to do is you want to look for something in the aerospace industry and look for all different types of job titles. If you see a mechanical engineer job opportunity as an internship, a co-op, or a full-time job, don't write it off. Definitely consider that that is something that's right along with the degree that you are working on or that you have just received. If you are interested in aerospace engineering and you can't major in it for whatever reason, or you decide not to major in it because you want to have a more general degree and then go into the aerospace industry, this is a list of alternative majors for you. The way that this was built was to look at a few schools that provide this data um, and look at the companies in the aerospace industry and what majors they are hiring. You can see this is a huge list. If you want to be in the aerospace industry, you do not have to major in aerospace engineering. You see that from the titles that the aerospace industry doesn't necessarily have people who have that job title anyway. So if you go and get an electrical engineering degree or mechanical engineering, materials, chemical, welding, computer science or engineering, or computer science and engineering, engineering management, engineering physics, applied math, there is a huge variety of majors that you can do that will get you into the aerospace industry. And the numbers that I'm seeing of the grads that these companies hire, they're not hiring a majority of aerospace engineering engineers. They're hiring engineers from all disciplines who are interested in the aerospace industry. So don't be afraid to major in something else. If someone tells you that you need to get a more broad degree that you can use for something else, don't worry about it. Go get a degree in some of these other things, and you can get into that aerospace industry. I have a friend whose daughter is interested in aerospace. He told her, he's actually an engineer. He told her she had a choice between electrical and mechanical. So she chose one of those, and that's what she's doing. So she will have an opportunity to um, go into the aerospace industry with that degree, and she'll be totally fine. I also was talking to someone else whose child was doing an internship with Boeing, I think it was, and they said that none of the other people in their program, including that person, were majoring in aerospace engineering. So, long-winded way of saying major in aerospace or major in a lot of other things, and you can still meet your career goals. Here's a list of a few resources that you can reach out to if you're interested in learning more about aerospace engineering. MITx has an introduction to aerospace engineering, and you can audit the class for free. And then Next Engineers has a career profile in aerospace engineering. Of course, you can also just Google aerospace engineering, you get a lot of others, but these are two that you might just look at quickly. I will provide the links for these in the description of this video so you can get to them easily. All right, so that is our deep dive into aerospace engineering. I hope that it was helpful for you. If it was, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, share with friends, and we will see you the next time around.